All right. Tell me what you guys see. Do you see a big full background or does it look like I'm in the Canva app?
Caffeine, exercise, alcohol, full screen.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. All right, full screen, and then let's hope the slideshow works. All right, so for those who are watching this at home on the recording, welcome back to the Tuesday call. Dennis here at Train Athletic, and as usual, we're talking fitness, nutrition, health, all things related. So today's topic, we're focusing on sleep. And this here is an acronym that I created. And as you can see, it spells out CEASE. And so these are the things that I have seen in my experience that are standing in the way of a good night's sleep. So let me back up real quick, maybe. Give me 1 second. And just kind of go through the big picture. So this all connects. So how to achieve fitness, okay? So I know we talk about weight loss, and we do focus on that quite a bit. But for me, I like to define it as fitness, because you could be really skinny. You could be very light, but not healthy and not fit. And so fitness is exactly what we were just talking about offline. It's how well can you perform at life? Can you physically do all the things you want to do, mentally do all the things you want to do? How challenging is it for you? Are you living with ease and flourishing, or are you feeling restricted some way? And so when we start to think about that, we can look at things other than just the scale for areas of improvement and success. But B, we can also start to think about food as nourishment. Food is nutrition. It's not just something that like you have to just get enough to survive and then everything else is bad, right? Food is good for us. Movement is good for us. So we start to look at it in this therapeutic sense. So how to achieve fitness? Well, first we have to understand the inputs. So this is the formula here. It is not difficult. Stress plus recovery equals adaptation. When you adapt positively to stress and recovery, you become more fit. This seems very simple, but so many people either kind of misattribute stress as only being a bad thing, or they kind of get that, they get the hustle, they get the grind, but they forget how important recovery is. So you really, really have to focus on this full formula to get the results that you want. So mental stress is not necessarily a bad thing. Use stress, okay? It's good stress. Mental stress triggers learning. You actually need to feel a little bit agitated. You need to feel a little bit challenged in order to deeply learn something. This is why we remember things better when there's an emotional attachment to it, okay? So stress is good, and stress triggers transformation. Physical stress triggers growth. We understand this, right? We understand we go in and we do resistance training. It's stress on the body. We overload our muscles, our joints, our bones, and that triggers a growth response. It puts out signals into our body saying, hey, we are now doing things that are more challenging today than yesterday. And so if we want to continue to survive in this environment, we need to grow, we need to adapt. And this is a really good thing because, stronger muscles, stronger bones, they let us live better lives, but they also equal a better metabolism. So we can have that lean body and that physique that we want. But we have to get that recovery piece. So the simplest inputs for recovery are food and sleep. Okay. Food and sleep equal repair and consolidation. So repair for the muscles and consolidation for that mental learning. If, let's talk about the mental stress aspect. So, let's think about like our college days, pulling all-nighters, cramming. You could force yourself to really, dig deep into studying, but if you never actually get like a good night's sleep and get some time away to let that new information consolidate, you're not really going to deeply learn it, and you're not going to be able to apply it. And so that's why cramming is not really a good strategy. And even if you crammed and managed to pass the test the next day, you wouldn't remember a year from now what the heck you studied. So the things that you understand the best are the things that you spent enough time with day in and day out, and learn under normal circumstances where you had some normalcy in your life, including sleep. And then the repair is kind of obvious, right? So if you damage your muscles and you sort of break them down, but you want them to get bigger, then you need to give them the fuel that they require to build. Otherwise, you're just damaging. Okay. So what's stopping you? I think first it's just that understanding. So your ability to adapt, your ability to achieve fitness is proportional to your ability to execute that formula. If you do all the stress and none of the recovery, then all you've achieved is stress. You don't achieve the adaptation. Okay. So you can think about this. You can have all the stress in the world, but if you're an extremely skilled recoverer, then you can come into the next day fresh and you can repeat that effort. But if we put more stress into our life than we're able to recover from, then that stress is carrying into the next day. And that could be mental stress, emotional, physical, whatever. And then it starts to accumulate, and it builds up and it builds up and it builds up until it spills over into burnout, into breakdown, into injury, to whatever it is. And so the surest way to put a stop to that cycle and to make sure every day we start fresh is to get a good night's sleep. So what I see in the average population are certain habits that must cease. Okay. So caffeine after 2 p.m. must cease. Exercise. Now, this is an interesting one in the evening. Now, I don't actually count personally things that are relaxing, like walking, stretching, or sort of mindfulness yoga that's not too intense. But if we're getting high intensity late in the evening, close to bedtime, we're spiking the stress hormone cortisol, and we're not giving our body enough time to downregulate to get that good night's sleep. For some people, walking might actually meet that threshold. Lisa, hopefully you don't mind me calling you out, but you shared with me that you were doing some late evening walks and they were quite brisk, and that was interfering with your sleep. So it could be really any form. You have to discover that for yourself, but we should try and strive to avoid high intensity in the evening. Alcohol. This has been a big one. This is, a lot of people have questions around this. I think, if you're having fun with the Mediterranean diet, that entitles you to, 1 or 2 glasses of red wine a day, but that would be best at dinner time during your eating window. If you do it 2 hours within the 2-hour window before bed, you're going to disrupt your sleep cycle. Even if you feel like it's helping you fall asleep, what's going to happen is you're depressing your nervous system, which is allowing you to feel like you're falling asleep. It's more like passing out. But there's a micro awakening that happens because when that alcohol wears off. When the alcohol wears off, your nervous system tries to compensate and kind of ramps actually back up. You may notice and you may experience the wake up. You may not notice, but you won't get into that deep REM sleep. If you have, a reasonable amount, 1 to 2 drinks with dinner, that's enough time to metabolize, process that alcohol, and go to bed with a clean slate. Screens is next, and this is an actual epidemic in our society. That's everything from TV to Instagram to working late. It's literally, well, there's a lot of issues, but even literally just down to the blue light from the screens, our brain perceives that similar to how it perceives sunlight. So it's disrupting the circadian rhythm of, how our brain is signaling certain hormones in our body, specifically melatonin and cortisol. Blue light is more similar to a daytime light, which is telling our body to produce cortisol to kind of keep us stimulated, keep us awake, because we are supposed to be diurnal daytime animals. Okay, so people do things like, blue light blocking glasses. But I think, what would be more reasonable is 1 hour before bedtime, start a wind down routine. Do something like a hot bath, read a book, we want to dim the lights. But if we can kind of get away from that stimulation and, beyond the screens, I mean, just especially if you're watching news, or getting caught up in dramas or horror movies or whatever it is, it's anything that's getting the heart going, getting you agitated, that's not going to lead to a good night's sleep. So we want to allow some space, and you can see a theme here: 1 to 2 hours before bed, we want to allow some space. And so lastly is the eating. The eating is going to disrupt that too. And, a mixture of reasons, but everything from just, having undigested food in your stomach. So you're going to have heartburn, or, indigestion, to just, your insulin being up and your hormones being a little bit out of whack throughout the night. I really went deep into this in my recording that we did a few weeks back on the circadian rhythms. But this is kind of a nice little easy thing to remember. C's, caffeine, exercise, alcohol, screens, eating. Now, what's even easier to really remember is create a wind down bedtime routine. That, if you try it, will actually feel really good and reinforce itself. So for me, what that looks like right now is a very slow, gentle walk with the dog. And then a lot of times I'm putting my son to bed, Lincoln, reading a bedtime story, and then I'll do something like take a hot bath, read a book. That's a great time to do some breathing exercises, some light stretching. Usually if I'm doing stretching or breathing or anything like that, it's in my room with the lights out. So I'm not quite ready to be snoring, but I am priming my system that, hey, this is nighttime, this is quiet time. And then by the time my head hits the pillow, it's out, lights out. And and you should be able to drift off 10 minutes and be sound asleep. So this is huge. This is huge. And we want it to be, the same time. So there's a whole sort of field of medicine that people are exploring right now. And they're calling it, circadian medicine or circadian healing. And it's the idea that our body, our cells, every cell literally has what they're called clock proteins. Our cells tell the time, and it's a 24-hour clock, and they want to be on repeat. Everything wants to be on repeat. We truly are creatures of habit. And so when we do that, we suffer. We either suffer the consequences or we reap the rewards. But it's very easy to set ourselves up for success if we begin to understand the triggers. Some of the biggest triggers are light. So people who are sort of heading up this field of circadian healing, one of the first things they say is, get up early, around sunrise, somewhere in that area, and get fresh air and morning light in your eyes. Your best night of sleep starts that morning, okay? And your best morning starts the night before. So getting outside, getting as much sunlight as possible, and minimizing as much artificial light as possible is a great, great, great first step. Stacking the sunlight early in the day, and then as the evening rolls around, really dimming the lights in the house, on your screens, and working towards that dark, quiet hour before bed. And you can and will have the best night's sleep of your life, and really start to recover, really start to see the benefits where that cortisol gets under control. You start to see the weight coming off the scale. You start to see better improvements in your adaptation to exercise. Your muscles will grow more. Stress hormones interfere with muscle protein synthesis. And they interfere with our mental well-being. So it's huge. It's huge that if you were to do everything in this challenge but get a crappy night's sleep, you won't have success. That point I can't stress enough. And if you were to do 2 of the 3, or 3 of the 5 things, but one of those things is get a great night's sleep, you'll have a huge amount of success. So sleep really is number one. Maybe I should put it in week 1. I put it in week 6 because I want to leave you all off on a high note. But some of you are getting a preview. So really, 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 I can't stress enough, get a great night's sleep. And that ends my presentation. So we'll open it up because I'm sure you guys have questions, comments, concerns. So please let me know. What do y'all think?
Well, I've had the conversation about sleep just yesterday because that was one of the things I think I know I've identified as a huge opportunity for me to improve on so many different fronts: consistency, routine. I think for so many years raising kids, your routine's the last one that happens because you work so hard to make sure they have a routine, and you kind of forget about your own. And I almost don't know how to have a bedtime routine anymore. After you and I talked yesterday, I came home and I'm like, well, what is my bedtime routine? And well, I don't really have one. Sometimes it's fall asleep on the couch. Sometimes, and it's just, it's poor at best. So, so many other things are triggered by that poor bedtime routine. So it's kind of, in a way, because, like you said, building on all the other things of protein and, less sugar and all of that. Even if those things slip now and then, the bedtime thing is so huge, and it's going to take a while to kind of prioritize that for myself. So I love your focus, and I liked, the way you mechanically explained it too, because it affects the way your body operates. And there's no doubt it's probably one of the things that's really contributing to me losing weight or not losing weight.
Yeah. And I think you can look at this challenge and kind of take away and probably feel it is like so much of this is just taking control of the controllables, right? Well, why do we eat the processed foods? Why don't we hit our protein? Why aren't we getting the steps? All these things, because life happens, right? There's a lot of chaos. And so, something like sleep is a great starting place. How many of us really don't have control over that last hour of our day? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm sure you guys could list a million reasons why we don't. But again, that's kind of the point, right? This whole thing's navigating chaos. I think on the whole, that's a great opportunity to start taking control. And I think you can find it's in a really enjoyable way. I mean, all these things do feel good, whether it's a hot soak, whether it's a stretch, whether it's a breathing exercise, reading a book, all these things feel good. They're just outside of our current social norm. And so it's a great starting place. And even with the waking up, a lot of us can wake up 15, 20 minutes earlier and just go get some fresh air outside. Breathe it in, soak in the sun. I mean, what a great way to start the day before we get into the chaos of life. And that's kind of the issue with like social media and the news cycle and all that as well, is like it can become very addicting, but we're essentially handing over our mind state and our emotions to the abyss, to the void of chaos. It's like when you log on to Instagram or TikTok or whatever platform you're on, or even YouTube, it's like you really have no idea what you're about to see. And you're scrolling and it's like happy emotion, sad emotion, something that pisses you off. And it's like so much, we're just feeding ourselves into chaos. And, when you look at the people who are having the most success, they're the ones who are taking back control. So I think that's a big theme for this, definitely today's topic, but, for the whole thing in general.
I definitely agree with that, what you were just talking about, Dennis, the considering your inputs, like what it is around you, what you're subjecting yourself to, what you're choosing to put your attention on. I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I agree. And like, some people are really good at it. They've curated their inputs as far as like the social media and all that goes, so that it's all like positive stuff. But I mean, I don't even have that level of discipline, because I'm kind of a sucker for the drama. So for me, I have to just say, well, it's an issue if, so we talked about eating with screens. If we're going to execute mindful eating, we should try and do it screen free. That's another great little sort of mindfulness exercise and a way to start taking back control and start to experience food again and start to improve that relationship with food. Just actually tasting the flavors of your food, actually like listening to your satiation signals while you're eating, rather than mindlessly consuming information and calories all at the same time. We're never gonna really know when to stop when we do it that way. So yeah, just finding little spots. Look, how many of us are, you don't have to say it out loud, but like if you're on your phone while you're eating, if you're on the phone in the bathroom, if you're if you're on the phone, taking little scrolling breaks at work, it's like, okay, who's in control at this point, right? And where's the boundary with that? Like this is, it's a force to be reckoned with. And if even the hot soaks, like I caught myself during my wind down, which I literally just preached to you guys about, like the whole point is unplugging, detaching. I caught myself kind of bringing this in to the bathroom with me. It was like, well, I can listen to a podcast, whereas like I can read a book on my phone, but it's a slippery slope. Next thing you know, I'm reading a book and then I'm looking at Instagram. So I think just building that awareness, it might seem odd that, a nutrition fitness challenge, we're even talking about the tech, but I think that you'll find it's kind of inseparable. And so there's junk food there, and there's junk information, there's junk light, and all of it's having an impact on our hormones and our recovery, right? Our stress and recovery cycle, and our ability to adapt and become more fit.
Has anyone on the call tried any of the various apps that are supposed to be helpful with that? I've seen some apps that'll just shut your phone off.
Yeah.
I haven't.
I haven't done the apps. I've let like the Apple Watch and iPhone kind of like do a couple things. Like ironically, it'll tell me to take a mindfulness moment, but I also set it up to say, it's nighttime, and it goes into night mode. So it kind of tells you like, hey, shut it down. You can,
Yeah.
of course, override it. Like you can always override it. So, but at least it's a nice little reminder. And for some people, that means like putting it into the gray tone or whatever, which I kind of just permanently changed all my stuff to like the darker backgrounds, moving that blue light. But yeah, there's a couple settings, but I haven't used any of the apps. I don't know if anybody has.
I haven't used the apps either, but I definitely have used at one point it would tell me like it's time to wind down. Like you can
Yeah,
set,
mine does too.
you can set that so that it'll tell you that, which is helpful.
Yeah, I'm really good at ignoring those things.
Me too. I get it.
I have set myself reminders and alarms and they don't work. So I was just curious about the ones. Maybe I just need something that shuts my phone off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Grace, you and I were talking a little yesterday, and it's all kind of related to any sort of obstacle, whether it, especially about making habits and routines, for anything, whether it means removing something like the phone in the evening or getting into an exercise program. I think you have to find a way to make it rewarding, right? It can't feel like a punishment. It can't feel like a burden. So we're trying to create new habits that feel better. And so at first you kind of have to take a leap of faith and trust me, or, trust whatever source of like, yeah, you will, this will feel good. Like actually getting out of bed 15 minutes earlier and just having a 15-minute window where you literally you can bring your coffee, just enjoy nature for 15 minutes before you get into this rest of the day. Like if you experience it a few times, you'll be like, you're right, I believe you, and you'll want to repeat it. So I think it's like the getting started, and then the remembering that it feels good. There's, something about just like melting into the couch, that feeling of lethargy, like it is hard to overcome, and I guess if you're there, it's kind of like, well, is there anything better than this? Should I just go to bed? I mean, am I tired enough to actually go to bed? Or do I need to move? But kind of just thinking down that line, I think if you have the list of behaviors that you believe would be better or optimal, the remove, replace, and then just reminding yourself, like, just take that leap of faith, like do it, even if it seems counterintuitive right now, and then check in and be like, did it actually feel good? And then work with that for as long as you can until you start to have the impulse to do it, because it feels good, that it keeps calling you back. That's been my experience anyway. Specifically with like the walking steps. It's really easy to be like, yeah, I've done 5,000 today. It's pretty good. It's good enough. But when I'm sitting there on the couch and it's like, all right, I've already watched an hour TV. I don't feel like getting up and walking, but I know if I do, I'll actually feel good. And it's never wrong. Like I've never been like, nope, I was wrong. Like I feel horrible now for walking 30 minutes. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that relates to you guys somehow.
Finally getting some better weather here, Den. So hopefully I'll be getting out more to walk.
Yeah. Weather
Amen.
does
Took
make
Finley to the beach today. He was very excited.
awesome. Very good. Well, I'm very excited to get that. My aunt lives in Ocean City, New Jersey, for those who don't know. So great place to walk, boardwalk, beach.
And I don't do it nearly enough. You kind of take it for granted when you live here. It's not a good thing.
You could, I mean, I don't know what your schedule looks like right now, but I did do this in Florida for a short period of time where I challenged myself to do either a sunrise or sunset on the beach. That I think would be really cool. And Grace was around a couple of years ago when I put out the sunrise challenge. And so I managed to do 40 sunrises. It was 2020, it was like pandemic lockdown, but I would take Dexter for a walk every morning, and right at like kind of the corner of the trail, you could catch the sunrise. This is like the perfect time of year for it. And once I did it once, it was like an addiction. I think that's like just such a healthy behavior. It set that for me, that was my wolf. I don't know if you guys remember back in week 1, I said, kind of look for your wolf, like this one behavior that you can put into your day that kind of creates the snowball effect for everything else. And for me, that was it. It was like, if I started my morning that way, I was on, whatever the word is, like perfect mode for the rest of the day. Like I just wanted to do everything so well for the rest of the day. The only problem is then when it was like a rainy day, then it was like a wash. Like I didn't want to do anything. So I had to find that balance. But yeah, I mean, just things like that, little that seem sort of like innocuous could actually have a snowball effect where you're just saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to get into watching the sunset every evening. Be surprised how much of an impact that could have on your overall well-being.
See if I can get Andrew to do sunrises with me. We'll see if we can do that.
Yeah.
He'll do it. He'll have to drag my butt out of bed.
Well, just tell him that you're going to go surfing. He'll want to jump in the ocean early in the morning.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what he'll do, and he'll leave me there.
Never too late to learn, I guess.
Oh, gosh. I can barely stand on my feet, let alone on a surfboard.
The cold water would be good for you, too. That's a great way to wake up. Then you're knocking out, like, all of the circadian health stuff. So that's a big one.
Really?
Yeah, and so it's all like this biohacking world, the circadian health, paleo, they're all kind of intertwined. And the cold therapy, is really popular right now. Sunlight.
I don't know. He's thinking that cold water might be hurting his bones at this point because he surfed all winter and he's like, it was hell.
Well, he might take it to the extreme, but there would be a lot of people who are envious of you if you could start your morning with a cold plunge / sunrise. You could really get your hormones optimized that way.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I don't even go in the water in the summer.
Challenge is on. See how it affects you. See how it affects your mood, your hunger. It could do a lot.
I might have to give it a try. All right. I'll let you know.
All right. I love it.
Could become your new favorite thing.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
I'll do it with you when I come.
All right. I'll have to practice then.
Okay. What else you guys got? Anything? What's kind of a sticky point for anybody at this point? Everybody feels like they're doing good? Sugar. Yeah. I think that, so, we talked about this in the gym. In the long run, maybe during the challenge, you can really try and remove it completely. But in the long run, you're going to have to apply the 80-20 rule. So, we talked about, if you have 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, 21 meals, the 80-20 rule, that would really give you like 3 meals, 3 cheat meals a week, which is actually kind of a lot if you stop and think about it. Now, that doesn't mean like eat a whole cheesecake for the meal, but it means like,
No.
you can have some processed food, some sugars, enjoy a donut. Like you really can, and you should be able to enjoy your life. Like that's like the big, myths. Like I'm the anti-donut guy, but it's like, no, it's just that you shouldn't be on a donut diet, right? Like,
Right. No, I'm not.
right. But, you could still have 3 a week and be, applying the 80-20 rule. So,
But I really think focusing on protein, with every, making sure every meal is centered more around protein has helped a lot.
yes.
Because then I'm fuller and then I'm not craving.
Yes. Yeah. That's it. That's the magic bullet.
And and I'm still falling off of that once in a while where, no protein, but, and I notice that's when I really crave the sugar more. So I'm just working on that.
Awesome. Yeah. And that is like the essence of the remove, replace method. So, when you identify the trigger, the craving, then the surest way to be able to handle that and overcome it is have a quick thought of what you should do instead.
Hard-boiled eggs have helped a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah, having them around something, you got to have something to grab because protein's hard, if you don't have something to grab.
Yeah, it's really easy to sit there and try and problem solve and rationalize. I shouldn't say it's really easy. It's nice in theory to say, okay, when, I have this craving, stop and think of something else. You have to kind of have that ready to go. That's why you have to decide now, like, what's my thing that I'm going to do instead? And if you have that already figured out, then it takes off that effort. It's kind of like, I'm not doing a great job of saying it, but it's kind of the same idea as like new behaviors take, like just thinking about doing them takes physical effort. Like they're able to measure this. It's like norepinephrine. And so I think that's why like to-do lists are so powerful, and planning and just deciding kind of now in these meetings, what are going to be your new habits that you try? Because then the effort of thinking about it and the decision's already done. So now it's just, all right, take a deep breath and try and go. I will share that last thing. So a lot of the stuff like that I reference, my number one go-to source is Dr. Andrew Huberman. You can check out his work. He's got a podcast. It's called the Huberman Lab. He's a neurobiologist out at Stanford. And so he talks about all this stuff. He talks about the sunlight really, really in depth. He talks about the cold. And he talked about breathing. And so we can use our breathing effectively without having to do like, a 20-minute breathwork session. So if, you're sitting on the couch and feeling really lethargic, actually just by taking big inhales and focusing on big in-breaths, that can actually be a lot of times enough to give you the boost and energy you need to get up and go. Versus when you're exercising and like your heart rate's really high, you actually want to focus on the out breath. Longer out breaths will actually help the heart rate come down. So weird little things like that, but it's all about building awareness. That feeling of stuck, we want to really fill our lungs, bring a lot of breath in, and get the heart rate going. So kind of weird thing, but if you still haven't tried the Wim Hof app or the YouTube video, give it another go. Even if the breathing pattern is off for you guys, do your best with it, kind of make it work to you. Because if you get through the whole 11 minutes, you'll get that biofeedback in real time is like, okay, I can change my physical mental state right here, right now, just through breathing alone. And that's really powerful. And until you even experience that, then it won't really make sense on how you can start playing these little games of, you know, being like, I feel glued to the couch. Let me, first thing before I can even get up and go, is change up my breathing pattern. It sounds weird, but once you know it, it's actually kind of easy, kind of natural, and fun. It's a cool way to just sort of take control of your biology. I would recommend everybody check out that podcast, because he certainly goes into really, really great detail, and you'll definitely see my inspirations from there. And there's a few other sources I go to, but he probably has the most crossover carryover. Well, that's all I really got for you guys today. I really just want to, hit on the importance of sleep and give you guys that CEASE acronym, things to think about. You know, start trying to curate that wind down, that bedtime ritual, and let me know how it goes.
Awesome. Thank you.
You got it. Anybody else?
Thanks, Dan.
You got it. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
See you later.